The sheriff's like,
Yeah, she's impressing me more and more every day.
it's only taken how many years?
Well, here we go. Let's just get it all out.
We have the last 4 days to really show.
Put something on it.
That's nonsense.
That wasn't even confirmed.
That's a big deal.
So proactive.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here and got a great group today. Let's go around and do introductions first. Curtis Landers, Lincoln County Sheriff.
Jenna Wallace, District Attorney.
Adam Shank, Sheriff's Office.
Jen McNabb, Phoenix Wellness. Jamie Russell, Sheriff's Office. Jess Palmer, Sheriff's Office.
Wiley Stokes, Phoenix Wellness.
Jess Ramsey, Sleds Behavioral Health.
Judge Bonaparte, Lincoln County Courts.
Steve Butler, so that's tribal behavioral health.
Selena John, Celeste Tribe. Lori Lager, Reconnections Counseling.
Alan Evans, Helping Hands. And Joshua Bloomquist, Helping Hands.
And online we have Commissioner Miller.
Hello, everyone.
Guy Greco Defense Bar here.
Perfect. Thank you both. So we thought we would start. We have, of course, been discussing the stabilization or whatever we're going to call it discussion last time and for a long time to see how we can go about and accomplish that. And that kind of led us to a small group went up there, and thanks to Wiley setting it up, toured the Helping Hands location up in Lincoln City. And that's what brought you two here. When we toured the facility, I thought it was great. I thought it would meet all of our needs as far as stabilization. Obviously, if you're willing to still move forward with that, and I think it was actually even better than what we were initially looking at, because I think it allowed for the longer than 24-hour periods. So, which we're looking at the Shutes County model, or even what HHS was looking at, it was 23 hours, and then they got to leave and come back. And I think this really helps the participant stay connected to resources and treatment and a plan moving forward. So, you guys want to kind of introduce you, and now you want to just kind of maybe talk a little more about what your thoughts are, I guess?
Well, yeah, so I'm Alan Evans. I'm the founder of Helping Hands. We've got facilities in 5 counties. We house about 600 people a night. That's what our capacity is. We do emergency shelter, which is low barrier, and we do a longer term reentry program, which is fed for trying to convince people that recovery is the best option for them to go. Now that the changes are happening, deflections coming into the counties, we've been doing a reentry portion, a recovery reentry portion of things for a very, very, very long time. So the ability to have low barrier shelter on site, to be able to transfer people and do what we do, because we run full navigation everywhere. So what navigation means is if a person comes to our door, whether they've been using or they haven't been using, they come into our emergency shelter. Our goal is to make sure a person doesn't go back to the streets, that we can navigate resources for a person in any direction. We understand the need for this now. We're making some movements in each one of our counties. Our largest facility has 318 beds at the old Wapato jail in Portland. So we've been kind of keyed up knowing that this needed to happen. But what it is we do is basically wrapped around the importance of what professionals can offer the county. That's kind of what our nuts and bolts are. Offender reentry is what we started out doing for quite some time. So we've got 20 years background in offender reentry. And this is what we're looking forward to doing. When we had conversations, how would be the best placement for us? We talked about it internally as well. I think the shelter bed space being reserved for deflection is probably our best option, so we can utilize people who are kind of, when we move people who are newly clean or just being deflected into our longer term program, it causes a little bit of fun. But I think with the resources that everybody's providing here and then our navigation resources that we're providing on site, I think it'd be a perfect fit. And it's something we're excited about. So we have a process. Our organization has a process, the way we've done things, and we've done it for a very long time. The process is very important to the person who walks through our door, whether they come in on their own accord or they're brought to us for a different reason. That program fits the person's needs. So we get an evaluation done of every single person who's in our facility. And we create an individual reentry plan based on their story to make sure we can plug them in with treatment, we can plug them in with mental health services, and then utilizing our partnerships with the community, bring that to the table. So that's what our goal is. And we were excited about the phone call. We've been waiting for it to happen.
Alan, can you answer sort of what your space would look like? So you said shelter bed, so police officer brings in, 2 people. Do you have just like a respite space or do they have to like be housed there? I guess I'm trying to understand what the actual space.
Well, it's a respite space.
Okay.
I mean, they're dormitories.
I see.
There's multiple beds in each one of them. So we'd have an intake coordinator on site, which we do 24 hours a day. Right now, we do intakes, Monday through Fridays from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. at night, based on it, but we're moving some other people around to fit this need. They would go into a bed space, be able to rest, relax, get some food.
Okay.
And then we would begin hands-on trying to urge them to stay the best we can and see if we can't navigate them to some space. It will be a group setting. We don't believe that isolation is going to be the best bet. So we believe if we have dedicated bed space in our 12-person dorm, then it makes sure that there's some other people there as well. So.
Is there, I think you talked a little bit about the restrictions on maybe a participant that wouldn't be eligible to come there?
We've navigated this for a long time. So a person with a sex offense or a predator or something like that, it is not our strongest suit because we have children on site at our facility. So we've kind of left that out of the play. We've had people in our facilities that have an arson background, a violent background. We've had, we navigate that very, very well. But we just ask that if a person is convicted of a sex offense, and it doesn't meet their needs either if we have children on site or women on site. So we say that that's not our box.
Okay.
But that's the only population. And we have to understand too that if there's.
Yes. Just Mr. Greco? No? Okay. Oh, you had your hand up.
And also.
Wait, does he?
Just not unmuted.
Oh.
Somebody else.
Okay.
I don't have anything. I'm just messing around with buttons.
Okay.
The other thing that what we want to do is we want a safe environment no matter what. If we put a person into a bed, if they're violent or belligerent or they're a threat, then we do our best to diffuse that situation. But there are times when we have to refuse service based on behavior. And that's sometimes at a low barrier shelter, that's all we have, is the ability to make that call. And we make it for the safety of our participants that are there and the safety of our staff. And we do utilize law enforcement the best we can. We don't ever want to remove a person from our facility in that kind of a situation and put it back into the community. But what we want to do is we want to find the safest route to do that. And as you know, with what we're facing today, that happens sometimes. So the ability to make that call for us is very important in talking about or communicating what these bed spaces are going to look like. We don't hold on to somebody for safety in an unsafe situation because we'd like to see them be better if it's a threat to our facility.
And kind of looking ahead, not knowing any we're going to have. We're starting slow with the number of times that we're actually going to have deflections eligible. How can we be assured, how much room do you have that so that we be able to have room in the middle of the night for?
Well, I think, so we do this for corrections beds in a lot of our facilities, that there's a bed space cost and the bed space to stay open. When we're facing cold and inclement weather as well, to have the ability to have safe space when we're dealing with an influx of people, December, January, February, sometimes late November, we get hammered because there's no real warming center bed space funding out there and we're kind of limited on that. But what we do in our contracts with corrections in multiple counties is we have a certain amount of bed spaces. Those bed spaces get paid for holding them there, and we make that happen. And if we need to make extra room for people, we can make extra room for people. But it's the safest bet to say, here's what the cost is going to be. Bed spaces here. No matter what, when you show up, we're going to have a bed. We're going to make that happen. But that's the safest way on paper, and that's the safest way for us, and as well as you, to make sure that there's a safe space to make that happen.
So from a financial, that's about at $33 a day for 4 beds and for 31 days is about $4,092.
Yeah.
So just for you guys to.
4 beds, $33. Is that with the rate?
Per day.
Okay.
Very reasonable.
$33 a day is very reasonable.
Yes, that was really.
That's part of the same.
Yeah.
190 for jail.
And that's back.
But
That rate is factored in with 2 more additional, although we have employees who live on site, this will be 2 more employees who are designated to be staffed overnight is their duty. So that rate is where that it's 33.90, I think.
Still really reasonable.
And as this gets a little more prevalent, it starts to build up in the community and we start moving forward, there's always room for conversation. And we have the ability to move those around.
Yeah,
Is your space, like you have the physical capacity in your space or no? Oh, you do?
We do. We attempt to make it as comfortable as we possibly can so we can urge people into recovery and reentry. So it's not sacked like cordwood,
Yeah.
but we have done that.
Okay.
And in some cases based on need. But we'd like to have a good balance between the reentry and the recovery portions and the low barrier shelter portions.
Your facilities in Lincoln City,
Correct.
do you have any plans to open something in Newport?
I don't want to say plans,
Okay.
but we're open to the options. In the homeless industry, especially from our point of view, we've been doing this for 23 years and we did it mostly on private funding. Because the criteria of our model doesn't fit into the housing first model. So low barrier shelters, people want to do it, but what we want to do is person-centered opportunities. And when you do that, you usually find yourself falling out of the funding streams. I think that we're moving into the direction that we understand that recovery-based housing is probably the most opportune thing that we can do today. So we're finally reaching that crest. So when we do that, then expansion is definitely in our model. And we served this county even through our Thugs Off Drugs program for 18 years.
Can you talk a little bit about the reentry and just for example, someone comes into the shelter, they have an option to,
Correct.
to stay there,
Yeah, so
you know?
So the reentry program, our original model that we did for years was recovery-based housing. So we can tell a person, hey, if you want the reentry program, here's what the cost is. We help them get into a job. We help them do those things. But our reentry program is the nuts and bolts of what we do. So we do a full reentry program. We learn demographics, needs, the obstacles they face to reenter society, and then we customize plans based on each person's story to help them reenter. Recovery is a part of it. You have to be clean and sober. And we do this and they don't have to pay to get into the program, but once they're stable, they do pay a fee for their bed space. And we put all of this information into our system called Together Data Systems, and we customize those plans with as much data and information from people as we possibly can. And we help them navigate step by step moving forward based around the concept of recovery, which we know is needed, but that's what we've been doing for a very, very, very long time. And our data is second to none. We've got the best system, we believe, for person-centered reentry in the state. And we utilize that to help us raise money and do other stuff, but also be able to show you guys when we work with a client, what we've learned from them and give you the data to back that up. And then we can make decisions on need based off the data.
Is our local probation department, do they pay for any of the beds up in Lincoln City right now?
I don't believe that we had conversations about it. We were a contract with corrections for quite some time, but things change,
Which is great.
And it's just the way it is. But we're open to that conversation. We began to have conversations about it when we first moved here. But those conversations developed. So we're not sure when.
What is the reentry rate, did you say?
The reentry rate for the person who pays for the bed space, we charge
$250 a month.
We charge $250 a month for the bed space. But what we do is we take our full budget, of what it takes to run this facility with our staffing, everything divided amongst the bed spaces. That's how we can come up with a daily rate of $33 to $35 a day. It's based on what our overall cost is to provide the service of the facility. So it's a simplified version of that. But sometimes can be more complicated because some people have higher needs than others do. But we base it on a flat rate of bed space broke down by budget.
So this sounds great, having a place and doing exactly what I think our vision was for having something for stabilization for where law enforcement takes them in the middle of the night besides jail so that they get them started on deflection and into recovery. So how does, with the treatment providers, how do you see, so someone, let's say we take someone there that utilize one of the deflection beds, how do you see that transition with somebody being there and then you doing your assessment, working with them? How do you see that whole thing?
Well, you know, we're already there 4 days a week, so it's easy for us. I mean, and the Lord, you're already in Lincoln City also, but I think that would be easy enough to do.
I guess maybe not just the ease of it, but how do you see it working through to when they transition out of the deflection thing? So I'm trying to get an idea of maybe how many beds we're going to need by how long's the person going to actually stay in deflection bed status that our deflection money is paying for until they rotate into something else.
Yeah, so startup usually is a slower process, right? We won't really know how to get that data yet until we get to the place. That's why I think 4 beds, 5 beds are fair.
Okay.
To do a beginning with. Our goal is to move them into a reentry or another bed as soon as we possibly can, but there's a little bit of work to be done. There's also work on how a person gets to our door and whether we're gonna know they're fit within a couple days or not, but we truly want to give them the chance to get their bearings under them so we can urge them into the direction of being able to get evaluated by all of our partners that are at the table to see what it's gonna take. So forecasting is difficult, but at least to start. And our goal is to move them and to begin to navigate them from that paid bed space for availability. Sometimes we'll leave them in a little bit longer. I mean, if our beds are full, if we do 4 or 5 in the first month and those beds are full, we'll know that we're gonna have to figure out a way what's gonna be able to navigate. But we don't want to limit the opportunity for a person based on available bed space. I think we're gonna get a call in the first couple of months, whether it needs to be 4 beds or whether it needs to be 8 beds. We'll figure that out in the first month and a half.
That's what I'm worried about, that we, because for whatever reason, they utilize those beds or they're staying in those beds longer. And then, last thing we want to law enforcement, but we're full, no more beds and.
Well, I can tell you, we will gladly figure out ways to make space based on an influx of that. We're starting this now in a really difficult time because cold weather's coming. So how we navigate that, maybe working together to get some long space and some other things, but we can make room. And we're willing to work with you on it, but it'll be the cost, right? And there's a cost affiliated with that bed space. So we have to, in the contract on how we move forward, we have to make sure that we leave some language that allows us to be able to maneuver based on need. If that makes any sense, and what that would look like. So who makes that call? Is it the officer who's coming out if we know we're busted at the scene, an emergency shelter? Navigation services are difficult because there are not a lot of places that we get to put people in emergency shelter, right? We try to create those programs in-house, but we'll know a little bit more when we get 3 weeks into it. I think what we're going to see in deflection is we're going to see a higher count in our wet weather and our cold weather as well than we are when it's warm outside. Right. Which is basic in our shelter world, right? We see that And it's also based on need availability for warming center beds in the county. And I haven't really done some research on what we're looking like available here yet, but I can tell you the last couple of years it sucked.
So what are we thinking as far as budget and moving our budget requests around in light of this? I think I guess everybody's supports with us, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
so what,
In regards to, could you guys speak a little bit about the money that we had kind of talked about, that you guys were gonna use your own funding for people that were select tribal members?
Yeah, well, we talked about when the peers, like having the peers that are gonna be responding to deflection, how we're gonna pay them, we'll be paying for obviously our own.
Would you guys be paying, I don't think to put you on the spot, but, so, but the $33 a day, if they're select tribal members, would that come out of your
Yep.
funding, not?
Yep.
Not this funding, but the tribe's funding?
Yeah.
So we need to take, so not only would you contract with this, but you would need to contract with the tribe as well, because they got separate funding for deflection.
So you would want a separate agreement with them.
Or are you gonna add to this?
I thought you guys were in the same agreement with sheriffs.
Did you, so
Well,
did
we
you,
could, either way.
So obviously, as we're talking about budget, I just wanted to take that into consideration, because there could be two people that are select tribal members that it wouldn't specifically come out of the 200 or the 357,000.
did you hear what your final number is? 382,678.
So try it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, 7 tribes opted in.
They did?
We were told it was only gonna be 3.
And you guys were the highest out of all 7
Yeah.
tribes.
yeah,
good for you. Congrats.
I saw that get approved at the impact agreement.
Yeah,
That's why.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's really good news for Lincoln County.
So what does that mean as far as, so are you in this planning stages of what to do with that, or have you?
Yeah. We still need to have some conversations. We have to apply for it still. They're gonna make us do a little application in December. I think the money will throw down in January.
Okay.
But yeah, Delana and I and Jesse have been talking about what that looks like, so. Giving money to the overall budget, you know, and then us paying for select tribal members who are deflection participants in those beds, paying that rate, that $33.
Is it billed at one billing for us, or is it?
That'd be the easier.
That'd be easy.
I think the easiest would be if you just submitted the bills and then the coordinator would figure out.
Yeah.
Send a bill to them for that work.
Yeah, so I think
I think the data behind the business. That would be a full wait after the first month. So the invoice goes in, we hold those beds once we get paid for those beds. Those beds start from that time. Then what we do is we'll create data on each person who comes in, what their needs are, what that looks like, and then we can begin to make decisions. You guys can begin to make decisions from there on. Well, what that's gonna look like, that's flux and then.
And for the tribe, I think we just need to figure out how much money we're gonna need for the other 10 counties, because we got 11 county secretary.
Yeah.
So you're gonna just figure out what we're gonna allocate to those counties and then, yeah.
So I think a county will have an agreement,
Correct.
and then I think we'll probably need a separate one to tribe. So that money is.
Whatever's easiest. Yeah,
Well, I
whatever.
don't think any of it's easy because we're talking about agreements.
Yeah.
But I think that is the cleanest, so. Because then there's just one with them, so they don't have to
Yeah.
worry, where does this go, who do I send this bill to? I think it's 2, no matter how you look at it, whether you're in agreement, either we have separate agreements or you have agreement with the county, but.
So would it be the same, so I'm just trying to think about this, so, because we talked about having this being really led by the peers, right, for the navigation services and everything. So, we talked about preserving beds for detox, which was a lot of money that we maybe were thinking wasn't a good use of that resource. So transition that to helping hands, okay, and paying for these beds. and then having each treatment agency bill us for bill the grant or whatever for their peer hours, right?
Yeah,
Except for the tribe did too, and then that
Or
would
we
be
could pay
dispersed
our
that
own.
way, or just pay your own, or.
yeah, and we talked a little bit about that, Jess, I'm glad you brought that up. We talked a little bit about that in our meeting, or the meeting, provider meeting. You know, because I don't have I hold new staff to do this, you
Right.
know, so if we were able to bill directly the grant, that would be for our peers. And kind of what we're looking at is designating our existing staff, you know, on a volunteer basis, of course. Whoever wants to take the phone for X amount of days. And then, you know, you may get no calls one night, you may get 5 calls one night, you know. But yeah, we
And then
could
track their hours or whatever, and then that way get billed.
probably, track the hours, because we're gonna have to pay them overtime for that time. Or,
Right.
switch it to something else. I don't know. We haven't really gotten sketched into that, but yeah, it's gonna be a lot of staffing hours for sure. So if we can build a grant directly for our time, that's the.
So, you know, looking at what's the easiest for the agreements. Gonna say something, but I was just thinking out loud, that would work because we have multiple providers, but. So the tribe, you guys would just fill your own grant or whatever hours or just utilize that,
Yes.
whatever. Okay. So it'd really be for
Phoenix.
Phoenix and stuff. So. We do just come up with a weight, so we need an agreement, but. It'd be nice to do that.
And an amount not to
And
exceed.
now not to exceed, so we don't go over the grant.
Right.
So.
We could have an expected number in mind. Yeah, I know.
Do we need to, I mean, you guys are at about, let's say, $4,500 a month times, 6, 7. We're gonna start in January 6th. And then the money that's left, we probably need to think about where we're going to, the question is, do we really need to spend this money by June to show that, like, we need to spend this money by June so we know that we're gonna get it again?
Right.
Or if we don't spend it, is that gonna put us, sometimes that puts you
I
at.
think we should try and strategically spend as much as possible.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I know Lieutenant Shanks and I go back and forth whether or not they'll just carry over that money, but I don't know if we wanna.
If we don't, I mean, we gotta be demonstrate the support, right?
So,
Yes, exactly.
And so I think what's gonna leverage us
For funding.
for funding in the future is gonna demonstrate the need.
That's correct. When you roll money over, it sectioning didn't do it. You're not careful. What happens is they take that away from the next year.
Because you don't really need it, I mean, but you said.
Do you think we should then start with more beds at Helping Hands then?
Well, see, that's where I was going with that whole bed thing to get money
I think
out.
that we should start with more beds there and for the stabilization, and then if people are splitting it out and actually doing the recovery portion,
Absolutely.
then let's look at the reentry program, because that's $250, right?
No, $250 for the participant, they're still capped on.
Oh, they get,
The
funds.
participant, our goal is to help them take care of themselves.
Well, I still feel like we should put more money in Helping Hands for that specific purpose, to get the person successful and reentry out of the deflection in the rental program, successful in housing build.
Would it be possible to give us the cost? Obviously, we have the $33 for like the individual that's being arrested and brought to your facility. But would you be able to give us like a second cost for the reentry beds so that maybe we could, in this period of time, reserve beds in both of the portions of your facility?
Yeah, so you understand how it works in reentry. When a person is capable of being employed, I mean, if there's a treatment plan and there's these other things in there, employment opportunities for a person who comes in that's on deflection could take 2 to 3 months. So what happens in reentry is we get a person in the reentry bed, and as soon as they're capable of paying a portion of their bed space, at the end of the day, the price of the bed is still the same. What's going to happen is the time frame that we can get a person to be at least a portion of those dues, what we call them dues, to be self-sufficient.
Right.
And that moves a little bit. What we would be able to do is eventually get to a spot that if they're beginning to pay that, then we go, okay, here's a break this month for Steve, or give you that, but it's going to take us a little while to do that. If we count on that, I mean, if we get a person in deflection and they're working a job already and they're ready to pay their dues there, and if there's no court fines, all the other stuff, you know. So we'll take a look at that. We could, I mean, it's $250 a month, whatever that full amount is to them, if they're capable of paying. But if they're not capable of paying, what we don't want to do is have to eat that internally as well.
Well, and I think, yeah, I understand there's, I guess, benefit, right, to them paying the 250 kind of as part of the reentry. I'm just thinking if there's a possibility for us to be billed, maybe to reserve one of your reentry beds for the deflection participant and what that cost would look like so that you guys are made whole. Not necessarily that they are paying their 250, because that seems like a good aspect of the program, depending on their circumstances, obviously. But that, I don't know, we're essentially doing the same thing on the deflection entry part that we are on the reentry part.
Yeah, we have some space that we've been having conversations about in reentry, what that would look like. Because we have a women's facility and we have men's reentry, they're separated a little bit and the population as well, but we do have some space that we can make them.
Yeah, and reality is that, you know, a lot of the people that come through the collection will stay with us long term.
Right.
And the dues that we collect are more to track and still a principal, right? And self-supporting. The history of the organization, fix the issue for not paying.
Right.
And it makes up about 8% or but it's not a sustainable model, it's more the principle. So, yeah, we have separate bunk beds in every room, although we don't put 4 people typically in there, we have the ability to, so we can make anything work.
Yeah. We can move that up. So the bed space availability is something we'll make work. Our only worry, and I talked about that with widely as well. Our biggest worry is this is a county that we're not sure what warming center is going to look like. And so, but warming center dollars don't usually hit our doors. We provide it because people are freezing. So our whole struggle is in the wintertime anyway. So the deflection beds and however many that you reserve are a blessing to us because they balance out that gap in need for us. So.
Is there a warming center actually in Lincoln City this year?
So
There is?
I think there.
I guess
there
I think it's gonna be open.
I think they're transporting people.
Yeah, to Newport too.
One down the tap.
It's not gonna be ready.
That's not the answer they wanted.
The funding piece, well, I know, that's what I'm saying, right, is as we understand the funding piece, the lack of that drop of the federal fund or the government funds that were coming in for warming centers, because it's really difficult. It changes our population completely because it goes from low barrier to no barrier. And then everything gets really hard for us. Our costs go up for our bed spaces and stuff like this. So to be able to reserve bed space based on that and then have to see if we can navigate somebody to another location is really good for us, even though those beds are available there. And I think they'll double because I think what will happen is we'll find we're gonna get more deflection in those cold times than we are in normal times because it puts people in a different headspace. So the availability of them would be great. And the security of finances for us would be great.
That's all I mean.
Yeah.
That's
I agree.
front end then, when we can always tweak it later down the
So
road.
should we still talking about reserving the,
Think so,
the
because
top beds? I vote no, but I don't know how to be voting.
No, you're reserving. That's, I thought it was that they were gonna get, you know,
Okay.
that they would take priority, but
Have you
if there were-
decided that that's not a good use of our resources?
I don't think it is. Because there's not even a guarantee. I think that still may be where somebody transitions to, but it'll just go through the phases that it goes through now. But that's what's needed. That's what's.
I just want to make sure that somebody else has a different voice.
Yeah, I think this is much better.
On the vendor website, we start to communicate whether it's a powerhouse or.
Right, that's part of the navigation.
We would just get them in there after long HP and that would be great.
Yeah.
I think 6 to 8 would be our best bet. Coordinator, for a couple reasons is once we get through winter, knowing what that's gonna look like, we'll know as we move into spring what it's gonna look like, but I think
For 60, then.
I think 6 to 8 would be the safest bet, right, through the whole thing, and then if we get on the back end and we go, hey, that might be too many, but I think being prepared for peak is probably the best bet, and reserving those spaces is it. I mean, I know it's a dollar sign, but it's a cost-effective dollar sign every
I
day.
think I agree. Again, I think the last thing, especially getting a program like this on the ground for law enforcement, is they don't want to hear, sorry, that's not available. It's just gonna, especially starting off, that's not gonna sit well. They want to know that that's the place where they can take somebody and have the drop off go very seamless, or even the navigator takes. Let's go.
It's only $63,000 for 6 months, so.
We have more budget for detox.
Yeah, don't we have 200,000?
The one I'm looking at, I don't know what date this is. I think it might have been June, honestly, had 15,000 a month for detox.
A month?
A month, and that came to
Really
150, so that was the number that we were getting for 10 months.
So we got about 350, didn't we? And then we had 150 going towards the case manager. That leaves about 200,000. So 63,000 for 10 beds for 6 months. And then that leaves about 140,000 for navigators.
Do you see that as reasonable as far as meeting staffing?
I think so, and it's only until June.
Right.
We'll know pretty quickly, you know.
And now looking at it, right, then we have some track record as far as how many hours
Yeah.
staff is expending.
And I don't think it's a bad thing, because this budget, obviously, we don't want to let it go through by April or something, but you know, if this stretches close to June, and it just makes our case for more funding next time.
Right, and what they're looking for is measurable results, so that's what I heard on, BJ meeting. Yes, they're really, she can't be stored.
Yeah, they need the results so that the legislators will
Yeah.
spend that funding.
See, that's a good source of.
And Alan's the numbers guy. But he gets money from their other stuff, going, well, I think this is a partnership that we can hold on.
Did we think, originally we also had included like, short-term housing or lodging, like, I think we were thinking of like overnights.
So I'm just telling you that that is a difficult thing. So from a person who pays for that, for the leads, that is not something that is easily accessible.
So then we would just delete that off the.
Yeah, you have to find certain motels, and if there is damage one time, you lose that.
Well, I think we didn't think we had this arrangement.
Right.
So
It takes care of that.
it takes care of that really, so.
Absolutely. This is awesome.
Yes, that's really good. Do you have a draft contractor agreement that we can start working off of?
Your county council has a similar one that we utilize for our contract beds. Historically, Bravo Bed originally wrote it years ago,
Okay.
but there's a draft policy in there from the history with our Thugs Off Drugs program. So there's a draft piece in there that council could probably pull up to give us a baseline to run what a contract would look like.
Do you have one with your jail that you do with corrections have been,
We bill them by the bed space now. And I think the last one that we really wrote up was for Yamhill County, and I'm not sure, I know that their council carries it. We tried to run it out about 2 years, but then when things got crazy, it kind of fell. But I might be able to find a draft of something that we've utilized in the past. And I'll get it over to Wiley, and then we'll figure out what that draft looks like. We can go back, it might take us a few days to pull that up. So are we talking 8 beds, 10 beds?
I would say.
It's only, like I said, 10 was 63.
I think 10 minutes.
Still, you guys have enough then, is that what you
So it's 3398 times 10.
Because some of them might try to fix, so some of that cost is gonna be offset. I guess, so it's like that's for.
That's 30.
Because some.
And I don't think you're gonna get first time.
How much?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we have?
But I just don't wanna.
That's 31 times 7. It's 63,054.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Well, I think it will help show the county's commitment to do that.
$63,054 towards the 10 beds. So show me 10 stabilization beds. And that's June through June. And then that leaves, so we have essentially 200,000 minus six, I mean, that leaves about 137,000 for, Navigator.
How much did you count for the coordinator?
I think it was 108 on here, but
It's gonna be
a lot than that.
Oh, so then we actually have more than we thought, obviously.
If we're getting such a late start and the county email to lower that pay rate.
Is there a part of this budget, because they're talking about Lincoln City, right? So what I'm thinking is that what you're gonna give from law enforcement is transferring to Lincoln City's no longer aspect of this, because they're gonna be like, so look into our world.
I know.
But is there any part of this for, like transportation or anything like that that we could work into the budget?
Yeah, I mean, you guys are probably gonna be the ones doing some of the transporting.
Well,
so.
but there are going to be instances, and I think Adam and I had this discussion many times regarding leads, is the fact that putting people in our personal car or our work cars and transporting them at 3 o'clock in the morning is not always safe.
No.
So
The law enforcement is gonna be responsible, and this is somebody where law enforcement is gonna take them, so you have Toledo police officer who's now gonna have to go up to Lincoln City to drop somebody off. Is there part of this budget, or do we lose all the money in here for transportation? That's all I'm asking.
I think there could be, I just don't know who we would pay to do it though.
So could the police officers, could the police departments contract with the county to keep track of their mileage or invoice, an invoice based on the mileage or the federal mileage? No.
I mean,
Nightmare.
I'm curious to learn a little bit about what the qualifications for deflection are at the time. What kind of people are gonna be dropped off at our door, what we're gonna look like. I think maybe some training in between and conversations about what that's going to look like. Because we do have a history, and I'm not saying that happens here, but we have been a dumping zone before.
Yeah, and I don't see that, and we talked a little bit up there, if somebody, obviously, through deflection, there's already gonna be a crime associated with that. The whole idea is we're deflecting someone from that crime, but if this is an uncooperative person at the time, they always have jail to fall back on.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that they might not get out of jail after that, and then let's move up now that they've stabilized a little bit, but that's gonna be part of the training that I think we need to provide to law enforcement. If you got somebody just complete, this isn't the place.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Because the county does it different, and when we're the only provider, sometimes there's some difficult stuff there. And when we were talking about cost of bed space compared to what that looks like, we will know when we come close to the 6-month mark.
Yeah.
If we have to bring a little bit more professional things on site, which might fluctuate the cost a little bit, knowing what it's gonna be like next slide when we learn our way through this year. So
and I think
we
that's
just want
why
to make sure that those.
just having those agreements to June 30th, I think is beneficial. Then we'll know the money moving forward and like you said, those type of things. But, obviously, some things can't happen, but the participant has to agree to it. And I think part of that agreement is you're going to go there and behave, yeah. And, they don't have to stay there either. So
Right.
I know, if Newport is bringing them up there, Lincoln City's not going to be happy if they walk back out in the street now. Lincoln City has to deal with them. And then they all.
And the conversations guys with that coming into the Lincoln City, I think that a rep from the PD should probably be part of the conversation.
Yeah, and Chief Broderick is usually on this, but he took the week off for the holidays, so we'll get him up to speed. I think we have our LEC meeting. Next week. We'll brief all the.
Chief Broderick is usually here.
Okay.
But I also think that, you guys talked about doing little, shows around the county. I think it would be good to have a representation
I think that'd be great when we do
with
those.
those, just to answer questions and kind of maybe put some people at ease or, whatever.
Because I think the other thing is how long is it gonna take for law enforcement to drop somebody off too? So, which I don't think it's gonna be long.
Yeah.
I imagine there's gonna be a criteria that he needs from them, or, I don't know.
Yeah, is Piers gonna be involved in any of that, or is the first role police contact?
Yeah, well, I
Like,
guess
and then
let's,
next
probably a good way to walk through the.
Okay.
We got a draft flow chart. I think this may help answer some of those questions, and then it's something we were gonna go through it, But so the officer encounters that individual that meets the eligibility requirements, which we determine is a drug enforcement misdemeanor.
Yes.
That's it right now?
I think that we had also opened it up to B and C misdemeanors like disorderly conduct, theft of third degree and trespass.
So
Starting.
do they have to be charged with the DEM
Yes,
and some other?
correct, yes.
To start with, I think.
They have to have a DEM.
Yes, they have to have a DEA charge. And if there's an accompanying B or C misdemeanor, then
They're still.
they would still be eligible, yes.
So then that person, basically, if they meet that eligibility requirements and they agree that it's be a deflect, then they would move down. If they don't, then basically, they don't meet the requirements, and then we would probably charge them whatever, take them to jail, whatever that means. And so then they're gonna call the 24/7 program number provided by the treatment providers. So they're gonna have a telephone number for law enforcement to get a hold of 24/7. They're gonna split it up between the providers on a rotation, and they're gonna discuss what option is next best for that participant. And then basically we came up with 3. There may be more of the individuals released with a citation. We'll go through the citation minute and info to complete an assessment. So somebody may not need to come into everyone that's being neglected doesn't need to come to Helping Hands. But they do need to probably follow up and get that assessment completed. Individuals transported to stabilization center, we'll probably change that to a facility and released with the deflection. So we'll relieve them with the citation. So we'll have that so they know how to follow up. Or a peer mentor comes out to location, addresses needs, individuals released with a deflection citation. So that's.
So I think the question is, so what are you going to, when you go do your, trainings, what are you gonna tell the officer, is a criteria to choose between taking them to Helping Hand versus just giving them a citation? What are you gonna ask them to consider?
I think that they need to consider whether or not the individual has a housing option to go to in that moment. Because I think that's the whole intent, right, is that if we're just releasing them back into the streets, then we're not really deflecting them at that point. So I guess that would be.
They need to be assured they're left in an environment where they're not going to continue whatever behavior caused law enforcement contact to begin with.
I think that's the key, is that they're not, so do they have not just housing, but a sober
Right.
environment, safe environment?
I think my vision of it is when they have that phone call, because I think that phone call is going to start with probably the law enforcement talking to whoever's out there in that call and saying, this is what the situation is. And then they're going to talk to the participant. Somehow between the 3 of them, they're going to work on that plan to what's best at that point, in a short period of time from the information they have. If everything, it looks good, then, they're, well, I can go home or somebody can pick me up, whatever it is, or they're probably just going to release them with a citation. But if they're in a situation where, the officer believes, or between that conversation with the navigator and the participant believes that you're just gonna be right back out here again, or they're gonna continue using drugs. So we need to do something and give them that opportunity for deflection at that point, bring them to the center. It's gonna come down to where, or it's gonna be like, I don't think I can help this person. Jail's probably the only opportunity.
Well, this is where the deflection program that, what the legislature envisioned, it had a little bit of teeth, right? Okay, so the officer can tell the person, I don't have a safe place to release you, to just give you a citation, and if you refuse to do this, my only other option is take you to jail.
Yes. That's the whole idea of lead programs that they.
Right.
And so you have a little more incentive to the person, not just, hey, you have this other resource, like, if you don't go along with this, if you don't agree to it, my other option is I'm gonna take you to jail.
And that's how it was always started, because, it's not just, hey, do you want to do this? Because they're going to be like in current, before September. It
Well,
was,
I think the 110's problem is that you just have a phone number to call. It didn't have anything that.
Here's option A, go to
Right.
jail and sit in jail, or option B, we can provide you with these services and get you.
So mentor will make contact with the officer and the participant before they ever get to you.
Yes.
So that's kind of.
So the crime has to be committed?
And drug enforcement investigator, yeah.
Have drugs on.
Which is just they call it drug enforcement misdemeanor, but it's possession.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And
It's a
then,
possession of a personal amount, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
yes, user wanted.
So I think to put it even easier, my vision would be officer has a participant in the field contacts one of our navigators. They're the ones saying that they need to go to Helping Hands, not the officer.
Well, and I see that, we're gonna have input there.
Yeah.
Correct. Based off what you receive from the officer and what you receive.
Just, I may tell the officer.
And you guys are like,
Hey, this is a good fit.
Or it may be the navigator, I need to come out and meet with that person right now.
Sure.
Because it may be the navigator that can convince them this is the right path and that Helping Hands is a good location for you to go, because maybe the officer can't relay that at the time, so.
Yeah, I envision law enforcement heavily relying on our navigators
Correct.
to really determine where that safe space is versus the actual officer.
Yes.
It's a 50-50 chance that they're gonna know who that person is too. Like, you know, I mean, too.
Yeah.
A good chance.
And one of the things we talked about in our 11 o'clock meeting was if a person, you know, there are many off-roads for deflection. And if they do come over here into the fact that they aren't, you know, they go to jail and that or that maybe even if the officer could even text that phone and say, you know, I just took a Lori Longer to jail. She met the criteria for deflection. She chose not to. Maybe you should go talk to them.
Yeah.
So we can even deflect, you know, they can even go into the jail then the next day and we can come in and go, you know, the police officer told us that they brought in Lori Longer last night. Can we go up and talk to them about this? They might be now interested in deflection the next day.
Absolutely.
So even if those are the kind of things we had talked about, maybe when we're doing education with the police department, even if they don't go to one of our peers, to let us know that they met the criteria and then we can follow up. And that, because they might then in 48 hours later, want to take that off.
So then, let's say that happens. That person's still at jail. They still need to wait and go to arraignment before they can.
Well, they're gonna be arraigned and
If
then.
they're charged.
Well,
And you-
if you're charged.
Because what I've been envisioning is if law enforcement notes on their probable cause affidavit
Mhm.
that we offered deflection and they declined, and maybe either the coordinator or the DA that's reviewing PC affidavits sees that and gets in contact with our treatment providers and says, hey, there's someone who declined last night. It's this person. Do you want to go talk to them? Because I mean, we do have a little bit of wiggle room in the mornings, whether or not we charge or not. I don't know how chaotic that will be.
So the other thing too, is they have a right to, say they want additional discharge,
Yeah.
right? And so even if they are charged, this is also a path to a additional discharge.
And that's where kind of going back to the flow chart a little bit. You know, this is already pretty busy. And it was really kind of meant to get that law enforcement and get that whole process started. But when we get over to that individual's process for criminal charges, there's really gonna be another flow chart I see off that for the DA and the courts to identify where does that person go now? Because they circle back around and be in deflection, or they can be conditional discharged or all the way up. So what I think that's gonna be for you, maybe, what does it look like after they go past this?
What's the time limit on deflection? So if they go, we came over there and they were there for 2 hours and decided it wasn't fit for them, they walk off down the street, what happens?
Well, yeah, then it's probably gonna come back to him. They did.
Probably charge them and put a warrant for their arrest.
They didn't
So is
successfully.
that something that you want information from us on that end?
Yes.
So what should happen is our navigator should be in communication with you. You will report to them the status of they're there, right? They're participating because they could have a fallout. They could walk out. But if they can get in contact with that person and re-engage them, we're gonna give them another opportunity. It's not gonna be an automatic. When striking, you're done.
And
Then a removal from our facility based on behavior needs to be generated as well, because that's their chance, right?
absolutely. So the other piece that you're not seeing here is they're the deflection coordinators. It's gonna be under the district attorney, so that person's gonna be coordinating all this. So that's really, even besides the navigator, the contact's probably gonna go to the coordinator. This person just left and so then they need to look at where they fall in. Follow up on that. And it could be the coordinator reach out to them and say, so left, try to find them, you got this many days or he is gonna charge.
How many days is that?
So
You know, I mean, yes, I don't think we are going to wait 6 months for the navigator to make, 10 tries to get the person in contact. I would probably say within 2 weeks, if the navigator has not had a second contact with them other than the night of, that's probably a case where charging and putting a warrant out.
Yeah.
Because at that point,
Yeah, we need to get that stuff.
given the opportunity and we need to attempt to figure out how to get services to them as quickly as possible. And if that's through the criminal justice system, then I guess that's the option.
Because there's still, once they, even if they re-engage through that warrant, there's still an opportunity to.
Right.
And so for substance use providers, we need to come up with like a packet, that they have on hand, so ROIs and everything are in place, with all of that stuff, so that we don't like lose them in the process, right?
So again, your release would need to go to, one of your releases would need to go to the DA's office because the case manager is going to be in the DA's office. So if they're in the collection, they need to definitely make sure they have that.
So yeah, so then they enter deflection, the officer still has to complete the report. With everything to the district attorney's office, and if they complete the program, then their record gets expunged. But if not, along the way, they get back to.
So completion of the program would be engaged in outpatient treatment and a total of 30 days consecutive clean UAs at 3 a week, no matter what facility they're at.
In a 6-month period, so we know somebody, if somebody stumbles along the way and has a dirty UA, as long as they remain engaged in that time period, 30-day time period, will start over again up to 6 months, and then if they're still not, they still have not, then the DO make a decision to charge them.
Have drug quarters.
Yes.
That's how it kind of looks.
They could move actually, the next stage is to drug court. Yeah, they could go up to
Yeah.
the little pilot.
It's just that we talked about that and I think there was some, I had a lot of questions of the community and I was trying to get people to understand is that the people we're talking about here in the deflection program are probably, they may be high risk, they may not be. I mean, we're talking about user quantity, and I think people really understand how, that program is versus, some of the population we're doing.
The crime's changing now, right?
Yeah.
Because now this is considered a crime. And
Correct.
we weren't doing anything really about that because of Measure 110 before.
Correct, yes. Yes, now we have the consequences built in to really, hopefully,
Love it.
encourage somebody to get the help they need.
Same line.
Yes. So I know we're running short on time. We have the draft of the citation. Lieutenant Bergner found out that we can get citations in 2 to 4 weeks. We just need to finalize these so we get an order in. So if it changes to this, and then we need to do whatever we wanted to put on the back too, even though that.
Well, Lori knows exactly what.
Yeah, we talked about that at the beginning.
Okay, good.
So just kind of outlining what.
So the one thing that I'm
what we're
asking
getting into.
exactly is, could we put the deflection peer's phone number on it in case they got released and 3 days later they actually were like, I really do want to talk to that peer. And so since it's going to be one number, I'd like to see whatever number.
You want that number to be out and about?
You want that, they're gonna be law enforcement number too. You want anyone to have that number? Why call anytime?
I think so. I think put it-
It's a 24-hour
Your
number.
number, how much?
Yeah, I
I
would,
think it's necessary.
okay.
Do you know what the number is?
Law enforcement, so you wouldn't have to
Okay,
order
we
it.
want to
Usually get it. He's gonna get the phone and the number.
So the only thing is that, how we had an idea of what a deflection, what maybe put that on so they know. I mean, or do like a little, card or something, so, a new person would know exactly what the crimes are. Are we gonna talk a little bit about, put that on the back of this, or are we gonna?
I don't think you want to put the crime
Yeah.
specifically on this. It sounds like the crime doesn't even just, definitely the DEM, but I think just really the process. So when we look at a uniform code citation, it's really just outlining to the defendant in that case what the court process looks like. You can attest it in person or by mail or this or that. So we just kind of want to get a good outline on the back of it. And it could easily be just a flow chart, put in words that fit on the back of the citation.
It will also literally be this size, so please consider that, right? There's not much room. This is already a very small font. So just considering people with, different levels of vision and that sort of thing.
It's like, I think you get a.
You did.
Oh. That's not where I'm.
I know we're kind of in a, wanting to get the citations ordered so that we can get that ready, so.
Well, Lori, do you want to maybe send us an email with what you guys talked about? Should be on the back and then we can add that to the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just want them to understand that, what deflection is and that they can enter it at any time.
I mean, what we're gonna expect from them, to successfully complete.
Yeah.
What that's gonna look like.
I think that some people don't understand that deflection is actually engaging in treatment.
Yes.
Right.
That is one of the things that, just hanging out with a navigator is not deflection according to what we had decided earlier, right?
Isn't that something that you guys will go over with, like, when you have contact with them then? I mean, I guess, do you think that having it written in the back of the citation
I would say that-
would be helpful to them?
Well, it
That
might,
does look cheap that way.
it might be whether or not that police officer gives us a call about it.
It says it right here, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you could, because if you guys have their citation, you can read your citations. Exactly, and at least maybe then that makes, you're not just hearing.
Keep it as brief.
Yeah.
Totally, agree. Just a couple few lines, really.
Yeah, we're just gonna write that up.
Well, Lori,
The lawyer's gonna take a stab at the draft, so.
And then you will have to look at it because of the fact that it's gotta be, after the lawyer.
But yeah, it can be very brief and it doesn't have to be complicated, but it
Yeah.
can be boom, 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 just like that.
These will be the.
We'll get a phone with one number,
A deflection.
get a phone, put the number, put it on here, that's the contact number. Then, the providers internally will rotate that amongst each other when the time goes.
rotate the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna rotate the phone. So the phone number stays exactly there.
Yes.
You're gonna rotate the phone.
We're gonna rotate the
Okay.
phone. Because it's
So
the easiest,
okay,
it's the easiest process I feel.
okay. Well,
Fastest way.
Does one of you,
Oh,
I'm
that's-
just thinking, does one provider want to get the phone and phone number and then just bill us for the services?
Yeah, see, I was kind of going down a different route, with just one
Versus-
number, we're gonna forward.
I'm just worried the county's not going to get,
Yeah,
give a county
me too.
phone to non.
So if you guys want to get it, just bill us, that's, it's gonna be
Yeah,
easier.
I think it would be easier. So I'm just thinking that one of my staff is gonna have it for 3 days.
Yeah.
And another's gonna have it for 2 days. And you know what I mean? The rotation, forwarding that number to a
Right.
different phone, it would just be.
So we're just a phone and a number.
Actual physical phone.
So
But we
which,
got-
who wants to do it?
Either way, we can do it.
Okay.
I don't get the number of the
Okay.
phone.
Yeah.
And then make sure we bill the county, so we will pay for it, and we'll just pay through like here.
So
Yeah.
probably get it quick so we can get the number on the citation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just let us know whenever you get it, the citation, we'll have that. Well, hopefully we can, meet next week, that's why the citation.
Yeah.
I'll get on to the talking. So,
Can all of the treatment providers, please check your information at the bottom right now. Make sure that that is the information that you want on the site.
We're missing an email from Tribe. Does Tribe have an email?
Yes.
I saw it right out, that's it.
okay,
When's the?
I was gonna do it, can we do it?
Okay.
We can find a second.
Okay.
Okay.
Because it needs to be shut.
I'll just leave this out at,
Write it down, and I'll just take it from you today, so you're just write it.
Oh, I thought, oh my God.
What does it say you have my?
Actually, all of this.
Now?
So.
So that's Monday at 2. Yeah. Our next meeting.
You should come next Monday.
And we'll put you on the email.
Yeah.
Ready to-
Josh was at, Alan, I don't have yours.
If you had, That'll be.
Is
I like it as a group.
Yeah.
And if you can,
You're in my office.
and you're sending Wiley the contract, so the money.
Yeah. If somebody, is county here at all?
Okay, we're done.
County council public or.
That's in both services. Probably no one was going to still here. Probably no one here with the council.
That'll be some troubles.
We need
Yeah,
to
we'll
do
get there.
deflections. So that we can decide.
And you don't want an actual, right, like, you can't just invoice us every month.
Everybody off. We did, well, we did. We can.
Well, I mean, I guess.
We do it. We do it.
That's up to us if we're actually over.
Once it ends, so we'll invoice. That's how we do.
Yes.
Cool.
So
Yeah, I did.
We're just worried about the delays of county process to get agreement through our legal
it's
department.
going to take a while. I don't know if that's big.
Yeah, we're the time of launch.
Yeah.
That'd be the.
It's been grand.